Hello everybody, welcome to this Working in New Zealand, How to Move to New Zealand webinar, streaming live from Auckland, New Zealand. My name is Scott Matheson. I'm the co-founder of Working In, and I have a couple of panelists on here today with a combined 50 years experience in moving people from around the world to New Zealand. So we're delighted to have you on. Even though New Zealand has no COVID, which you may be aware of, we're very appreciative of the fact that a lot of the world is in lockdown. So first things first, we just want to send our best wishes to everybody and really appreciate that you're coming online and listening to us today, even though you might have a COVID situation in your environment. So that's that. Secondly, I think there's a chat room here. There's several hundred people on this today. Please put your chats in, but we're not going to be able to answer them today right now. We'll be able to answer them over the course of the day and over the next few days. And in that regard, there's a lot of people here at different stages of their migration journey. For some of you, this might be the first time you've even thought about immigrating. It might be the first time you've even thought about New Zealand. And for others, you might have been here, you might have friends and family here, you might be a very long way down the process. So it's difficult for us to be able to cover everything for everybody in this environment. But we do have the opportunity to have a free consultation with us for 10 minutes over the coming days and coming weeks with Paul Goddard, who's UK based. So please keep that in mind. One thing I would like to add is that Immigration New Zealand, which is our government department, did a survey on all migrants that have moved to New Zealand over the last 5 years. And they found that 91% of migrants were either highly satisfied or very satisfied with their move to New Zealand. But there was 9% that were only satisfied or unsatisfied. So I was quite interested in this cohort of 9% of people who weren't really satisfied with their migration outcome. And when you drill down a little bit further, it's because their expectations weren't met. And when you drill down further on that, we kind of understood that they hadn't done their research properly. They didn't really understand what they were getting themselves into, and therefore came in with unrealistic expectations. What today's about and what our company does is make sure that you understand everything about New Zealand before you move, because migration is a lifetime thing. And you don't want to get it wrong. And if New Zealand's not right for you, you shouldn't be coming. So we're very real about that. We're not here to sell you New Zealand. We're here to tell you how it is. Okay. So I think in terms of where we are now, with COVID being not in our environment, we have no community COVID. We have people in quarantine who are in COVID. It seems like a very rosy destination. So I would be saying, don't come here or don't choose New Zealand because we're COVID free. It's not the reason. COVID will come and go. Migration is for a lifetime, okay? So next I'd like to introduce you to my panelists, Naseem Lalazari and Paul Goddard. Naseem works with me in the Auckland office as our head of immigration. Naseem, can you say a few words and introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Scott. Hi, everyone. My name is Naseem Lalazari. I'm the Head of Immigration Services here at Working In. I'm a licensed immigration advisor for New Zealand and a MARA agent for Australia. I originally studied law in Australia, moved to New Zealand 12 years ago, and have been with Working In for a very long time now. I'm helping thousands of people migrate to New Zealand every year with my team. Just a little bit about the team quickly. There's 8 licensed immigration advisors and we've got 8 administrative staff. So we're a big team with a lot of experience doing all sorts of visa applications for all sorts of occupations from all sorts of countries.
Thanks, Naseem. So Naseem is a living example of an Australian who's come to New Zealand and chosen to stay. It does happen. And on that point about a licensed immigration advisor, it's really important whether you use us or somebody else that you choose a licensed immigration advisor. It gives you some, I guess, insurance, and it gives you clarity that you're dealing with somebody who's been authorised by the New Zealand government to issue and give immigration advice. So bear that in mind as a really important point. And on that note, I'm going to introduce you to another immigration advisor, Paul Goddard, who we've been working with for well over 10 years. Paul.
Hi, Scott. Yeah, cheers for that, everyone. Yeah, a bit about myself. I moved to New Zealand back in 2003, early 2003. It was a bit different. I always say to people, don't move the way that I moved. Basically, the BBC got involved and did a whole documentary on the whole move, took us out to New Zealand, and that was 17 years ago. So it was definitely an adventure. And then, I moved through various roles and eventually ended up working with Scott and the guys over in Auckland, which was absolutely awesome. And after 17 wonderful years in New Zealand, I'm now currently based in the UK. It's not a permanent move. I'm just here at the moment, and it works really well for us because, as Scott just said, I'm over here, they're over in New Zealand. And I think that's a key point, having people based in New Zealand, but also having people around the world and people like me who've done it, been there, got the t-shirt, the all black shirt, basically, and have lived in New Zealand. If you want to move to New Zealand and settle in New Zealand, talk to people who've moved to and settled in New Zealand. So yeah, a little bit about me. Looking forward to helping, as many as you as we can make this move a reality like I did.
Fantastic. Thanks, Paul. It's great to hear your story again. I forgot about that BBC series that you're on. And very briefly, a little bit about me and working in. I set up working in 20 years ago with my partner, Hayley Roberts. And for about 15 years, we ran expos around the world where thousands of people would come through the doors to meet employers from New Zealand and Australia, migration agents, banks, anybody that would help you with migrating. So we ran these shows in London, Manchester, Birmingham, Dublin, Cape Town, Johannesburg, Vancouver, Madrid, all through Australia. So over that time, we met literally tens of thousands of people and really understood the psyche of why you're wanting to move to a place like New Zealand. So rather than creating an expo environment, which we can't do this in this environment anyway, over the last 5 years, we've been tailoring a bespoke product because we understand that every single person is different. Every person has their own unique circumstances. And so we really want to help you on your journey, just tailored specifically for you. So that's what we do. We're not fly-by-nighters, 20 years and 50 years experience at the table. So getting into the business now, the whole seminar and the whole webinar here is about how to get a job in New Zealand. You need a visa and you need a job, and it's a bit of a catch-22. And I think, Paul, this is your speciality. Maybe you want to take over in this regard.
Yeah, cheers, Scott. I think everybody's heard about the famous catch-22. Basically, what that is the way that the New Zealand immigration system is set up is you need, by and large, you need a job offer to get a visa. And then you'll pretty soon find out that if you go online and look for jobs in New Zealand, they'll say that you need a visa to apply for the job. So it's the whole situation of I can't get a visa because I haven't got a job offer, and I can't get a job offer because I haven't got a visa. And most people make the mistake of applying for jobs too soon. They just jump into applying for jobs because they think they need a job. And the response they usually get, if they get one, I mean, usually they don't get a response at all if you apply online, but the response is something like, sorry, you're overseas, or, you look great, let me know when you get here, none of which actually helps you. And the reason that the catch-22 largely exists is because most employers actually haven't got a clue how immigration works, because they're not really required to. They're busy running their business, and they're not sitting there researching the immigration website every day. And so if you get people who are trying to move to New Zealand talking to employers who don't know how to help them move to New Zealand, you can see that there's this immediate sort of wall or barrier to overcome, and it's just one of the barriers to overcome. But the catch-22, it's the one that we get all the time. It's people saying, hey, I've looked at jobs, I've applied for jobs, I haven't gotten anywhere, I'm at the point of giving up, I don't even know where to start. And as we go through this call today, I'll give you some more information on how you should be doing this, but hopefully that sums it up, Scott.
Yep, that is the catch-22. And I think you hit it on the head, where most employers don't actually understand immigration policy, which is not helpful for people who are overseas who are wanting to apply for that job. But I guess that's where we step in. So Paul, on that note, I mean, how do you get a job? How can you be a little bit more specific around that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it sounds quite simple when you explain it, but certainly the way that we help people is by going through 4 stages of the move. Now, most visa agents just do one of these stages, which is visas, and the point is there's a couple of stages you've got to go through so that you can get a visa. And so the first stage is what we call preparation, and this is so important. You can never be too prepared, but most people confuse preparation with research. And what I mean by that is they think that because they've been on the internet and they've read all about New Zealand and they've read all this information, they're now ready to move. The reality is you're not. Yes, research is important and it's essential, but it's actually much better to get personalized information that you can't get from the internet. So you can get that from somebody like me who can talk to you about what it's like and what you need to know. But the 2 other key parts about being prepared are being what we call document ready or move ready. That means having as much paperwork and things that you're going to need to get the visa as prepared as you can, ready to go for when that job offer comes through. Because if an employer talks to you and asks you where you are with the visa process and you say, well, I'm nowhere because I need a job offer, that is not a good answer. A far better answer is, hey, everything's in place, everything's ready to go, and all you need to do is offer me a job. But the crucial part about preparation, and this is something that is almost impossible to do if you're doing this without assistance, if you're trying to do this on your own, how do you prove to an employer or a recruiter that you're fully prepared and ready to move? You can tell them that you're fully prepared and ready to move. They don't even know what that means. It's far better to have somebody like us who can literally put you forward for roles and say, here you go, here's Joe or John or whoever, they're fully prepared, they're ready to move, everything's in place. All you need to do is interview them and offer them a job. And if you do that, we're here to make sure the process runs as quickly and smoothly as possible. That is a much better way of doing it. And unless you're fully prepared, it's really hard to do that. If you're just firing off CVs to jobs online, good luck. It's probably not going to happen because your CV is not telling the employer what they need to know, which is that you're fully prepared and ready to go. And from an employer's perspective, the risks need to be removed. If you're not removing the risk for the employer, it's hard for the employer to move forward. So that's step 1, preparation. Step 2, employment support. It's a huge part of what we do. As Scott said, there's the recruitment team over there. We do work with a number of, any skilled occupation we can look at and we can provide assistance with. But there's a lot to an employment strategy. It's not just about applying for jobs online. In fact, we'd much prefer it if you're not applying for jobs online, because if you are, you're flooding the market and it's harder to help you. So there's online jobs. There's recruitment agencies like ours. There's the hidden job market, which is the 60% or so of jobs that you can't see. There's possible trips to New Zealand to get a job once the border restrictions ease. And you need a strategy that potentially has all those tools in the box that we can use. And that's how we do it. Employment support is essential. Most visa agents don't provide that because it's too much work. The difference with us is we do. And it's really important because a job offer is what's needed to get you a visa. Then it's visas, which I'm not going to touch on too much because Nazim's going to talk about that. So step 3 is doing the visas. Obviously, having licensed advisors do the visas for you is a huge advantage, and again gives confidence to the employer that everything's going to be okay. And also assisting the employer with what they need to do is really important. And the final step, step 4, is relocation. Where are you going to live? What about renting property? What about a job for your partner who maybe hasn't got a job yet? What about, when they arrive, what are they going to do? What about the kids? What about schooling? All of these things, basically we provide support around all of those to help you settle and stay. So it's quite easy to understand. Get ready, get a job, get a visa, get on a plane. But it's difficult to do because every one of those steps has its own barriers and hurdles. And that's why we do it as a 4-stage process. This is the best way to make the move to New Zealand and have help and support around you, and have the employer have help and support around them as well to bridge that gap.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Paul.
Scott?
Yeah, look, it does make sense. There's a lot to it, isn't it? It's not simple, but migration is not simple. So we know that. You know, and we've got this added complication, of course, with the borders being closed and only a few people being allowed through, which we will get to. I can see that there's a few questions on the chat room saying what's happening with the borders. So we will have that as part of our discussion. I see a lot of people are asking us about age limits, and it depends. So we'll cover that off. I guess the next phase is what you said, is visas. Nassim, if someone does find a job, what are the visa options? Obviously, you've got the work visa, but I would imagine that most people who are listening here are looking for residency. Can you kind of give us an overview of that?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, just going back to the question that was asked that you mentioned about the age limits, there's generally not an age limit for a work visa. There's only two policies that have an age limit requirement, which is the work to residence and under the talent or long-term skill shortage. But most people actually qualify for a work visa under essential skills. So in New Zealand, we've got temporary work visas. So they're the short-term visas that allow you to come to the country sooner. There's a whole lot of requirements that you need to meet as an individual to show that you've got the right skills, that you've got the necessary health and character requirements so that you can say that you'll be a good citizen, so to speak, while you're here. And then the other part is the part that the employer needs to provide, which is what they need to do to show that you are genuinely needed and they're supporting you with that application. So we've got temporary visas, which are your initial visa normally to get into New Zealand to take up the role. And these are processed faster. And then once you're in New Zealand, obviously you'd be wanting to apply for residence, which is the longer term requirements. And the age limit is, when it comes to residence, is 56 years of age. So we've got residents under two main categories. One is the employer assisted residence from work. But again, like I said, only a few people would qualify originally for the visa that is that pathway. Most people and the majority of people we assist with, because that's the main pathway to residence in New Zealand, is under the skilled migrant category. So the skilled migrant category is a points-based system. So you get points for having different qualities, qualifications, and experience. Somebody decided that younger people that are too young will only get a certain amount of points. Those that are in the sweet spot in the middle of like 30 to 40 will get the most points because you've got qualifications and work experience. But obviously, the more work experience you have, the more points you'll get. So it's really, really important that when you're having a consultation with Paul and you've decided to go ahead, that we have a look and see what points you can claim, because the more points that you have, the better your chance of success for residence. We know that in all countries that they always want to pick and select the brightest and the best in order to get residence. So that's why they have the point system here in New Zealand. So you get points for age, your job offer, your work experience, any qualifications that you have. If you've got a partner that's also got a job or qualifications, all of these things will help you qualify and get those additional points. The other thing that's really important is if we can find a way that you can claim some additional points, we can then work with you to get to a place where you can say, great, there's an extra 10 points there or an extra 5 points there, because that'll put you ahead of the next person who's also looking to apply. So in a nutshell, that's residence. But as I mentioned earlier, the first thing is to make sure that you're prepared and you've got everything needed to get that work visa, and then also at the same time prepare for residence. There's slightly different requirements in terms of eligibility. There are always a lot more requirements than people anticipate. Paul talked about being prepared. Sometimes we'll come across people who say, oh, I'm all prepared, I'm ready to go. And it turns out that they haven't necessarily considered the bits that they need to actually move forward with the application as quickly as they would like. And that can slow down the process with the employer as well. And as you can appreciate, once an employer is offered a job, they want people to arrive straight away and take up that role. So we work with you to make sure that you can tick all the boxes in terms of policy, because we've put together a decision-ready application and you're good to go. Scott, was there anything else specifically that you wanted me to cover off in terms of residence or work visas in general?
Look, Nassim, I think that's a good first up summary. So basically, once you've got a job offer, you get a work visa. That's temporary.
Yeah.
Then, if you want residency, you can apply. There's two different pathways. One is the point system, and that's the most common.
Correct.
And that point system may change. So the number may go up. At the moment, it's 160, but we might see that going up. And so one of the things that we're talking about today is we're encouraging people to act sooner because of the this government that we have here, because of COVID, because a whole lot of New Zealanders are coming home. Then we are anticipating that there will be imminent changes in immigration policy, which may put the point system up. But as Nassim said, is that we one of the things that we do is we find points that you might not think that you have. So is that fair, Nassim?
Yes, it is. Sometimes people will say, oh, I'm going to be the main applicant. You just need to look at my information. And we say, well, no, tell us about your partner. Where did they study? What did they do? What sort of skills do they have? Is there a way that we could make, them contribute to the points? Because then as a family unit, you'll have, a better application. So definitely we'll look at all possible ways of finding any points that you thought you didn't already have.
Awesome, agree. So I can just see on the chat, there's a few questions here about skills shortages, what skills are in demand, what's happening with the border, when's that opening again? We'll come to that in a minute. For those of you that are very familiar with the immigration system already, you may have looked at an expression of interest, you may have lodged an expression of interest. We have a view around that. Paul, maybe you want to express your view about the expression of interest?
Yeah, basically, if you haven't got a job offer, don't lodge an expression of interest is the general rule of thumb. It's the first thing that you'll read about if you go on the immigration website. A lot of people jump into it thinking, well, that's the only thing I can do is lodge an expression of interest, and it will cost you a bit of money. And the reality is, without a job offer, it's not going to go anywhere for most people. The job offer is the key that unlocks all this. And so not only are you wasting time, usually by lodging an EOI, you're also wasting your money. So don't do it. It's the classic first mistake that we see all the time. Don't panic if you have lodged one. We'll look at your case. Don't think, oh my God, what have I done? Just talk to us and we can tell you where you move forward. But I think this whole requirement of having a job offer to move to New Zealand, whilst it causes a barrier or a hurdle to overcome because it's not easy to do, and especially if you're doing it on your own, it's almost impossible. It's actually a good thing because you have a job to go to. And it's so much easier to settle in a country if you've got a job to go to, which also means you now know which town or city you're moving to, which means the family, if they're coming with you, can all get settled in there as well. It's so much better than, say, the Aussie system where, they'll give you a visa without a job. And then what's the point if you haven't got a job? What's the point of having the visa? It's there. But yeah, look, it's one of those things. The EOI, don't jump straight into that. Jump straight into a call with us. That's the best first step.
Thank you. Okay, so look, border closures. I mean, this is a big deal. Obviously, New Zealand, island nation, way out here in the middle of the Pacific, 5 million people on an island. We, as our Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said, we went hard and went early, and so that created a situation where we were able to close our borders and put in very strict protocol around who could come in and what they would do when they come in. So very briefly, when the borders are open for New Zealand citizens and permanent residents, they are the priority. Okay, and when they come through, they stay in what we call MIQ, which is managed quarantine, and for 2 weeks, which are actually lovely 4-star, 5-star hotels with 3 meals a day. It's actually a very good quarantine, high standard of quarantine. People are tested on arrival and they're tested when they leave, and so that we're really ensuring that there's no community outbreaks. And those that are tested positive, they go into a special managed facility by themselves. But there are people who are on, who have got work visas, who are allowed to come into the country, like health workers, like some infrastructure workers. And maybe, Nassim, you could sort of drill down on what those occupations are a little bit more, and also explain that kind of, the dancing unicorn theory that we talk about quite a bit.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Scott. So as mentioned, the New Zealand borders are closed and you can only come in through an exception. So at the moment, there's a whole lot of different categories of exceptions that can be applied for. The ones that relate to skills, there's a few and they've each got different criteria, but sort of as an overarching sort of summary, anyone who's a health professional, so nurses, physiotherapists, doctors, all of those sorts of roles, we can apply for and obtain an exemption for you to come into New Zealand and take up your role. Anyone who's working on any major infrastructure projects, so construction managers, engineers, some sort of railway technicians we recently got into the country, all of those sorts of roles can also come in. Just to be clear, yes, we can get you to come in. It's not a super easy slam dunk application. There's a lot of work and a big submission that goes along with it, but it is still possible. And we've also been able to get these unicorns that Scott referred to, which are those that have unique or specialist skills that are not otherwise available in New Zealand. So that can be basically anybody that we can prove and substantiate to the government is this so-called unicorn. So you've got, experience that's not readily available in New Zealand. There's a need for you, and there's a New Zealand employer who's desperate and willing to support that application. So we've been able to get, some more fringe kind of occupations. So people that had experience with wind turbines, some people associated with the arts. So, film and television and music. And then there's also other categories that have been announced. So fishermen, vets, and some other specialized little roles. So with the border exemptions, what we're seeing is that every sort of wee while, the government will add another category because they see that, look, there's a need. We definitely can't fill it with what we have here in New Zealand. Yes, we've got Kiwis returning, but they don't necessarily have the right skills. Someone returning from overseas who's not a nurse isn't suddenly going to become one overnight and won't be able to fill that gap. So that's why what we're seeing is little by little, the government's adding to these exemption occupations. And although there's slight relaxations, there's still relaxations and there's other additional options available to come in under the border exceptions.
Yeah. Awesome summary. And I think the fact is that what we're seeing is a relaxation little by little by little by little. And so I can see that, in the chat room, there's people who are like, well, I'm a plumber and I'm an electrician and I'm an accountant. The really strange thing that's happened here because of COVID and the borders closing. I mean, New Zealand is very reliant on migrants. Our net migration over the last few years has been 80,000 per year, which is a huge amount for a small country like us. And then suddenly that stopped. But, our economy is kicking along, so we still need the skills. So what we're saying is, yeah, if you're an accountant or a teacher or an auditor or a carpenter or a plumber or a sparky or whatever you might be, we definitely have the jobs here. We definitely have the requirement. There's actually an acute skill shortage and lots of pressure. Wages are going up because of that. But because of the border exemptions, there's a sort of irony that you actually can't come in quite yet. So, Paul, what are you suggesting in that situation? It'd be quite good to hear your view on that, because you've been talking to a few people in this situation, right?
Yeah. The whole situation's around border exemptions and you can't get in or can get in, and should you just sit and wait it out? And the answer is absolutely not, because if you are deciding that because borders are shut that there's not a lot that you can do, then the honest reality is there are hundreds of thousands of people actually doing stuff now, and they're going to get ahead of you. We know that because we're helping a lot of them. and this is where preparation comes in. So even those people who we are literally saying to you, don't apply for jobs online at the moment, it's pretty pointless because there's a border restriction, the employer isn't going to respond, etc. What we're not saying don't do anything. What we're saying is don't apply for jobs online, but actually let's get you ready. Let's put an employment strategy in place. Let's do some research. Let's research your job market in New Zealand. Let's identify potential employers that we can reach out to once the border restrictions ease, and these border restrictions will ease. That's the reality. It is going to go away. New Zealand will be open at some point, and it's probably going to, as Scott said, be in a staggered, staged sort of way of growing. You know, Jacinda was saying the other day about building up herd immunity in New Zealand, which basically means getting people vaccinated. So you're going to get injected over there, which again, it makes sense. This is logical stuff. This isn't rocket science. It's not a surprise to anyone. But you know, the message is really clear. The future is coming, and the future is looking good in New Zealand. And if you want to be a part of it, don't sit around waiting. If you're looking to move within the next 12 months or so, start the process now by talking to us and start getting things in place. The reality with the move is you've got to do something to make it happen. Sitting on the internet is not doing something to make it happen. You've got to commit to something, and you've got to get this momentum going. Otherwise, you'll find that your life will get in the way and time will fly by. And this is a window of opportunity, and that window will close at some point. So you just don't miss it, you know, and I know that from my own experience. And that really is the key message. Don't sit and wait because other people aren't.
Paul, thank you. We're at 30 minutes now, so I want to start wrapping up, but I actually absolutely agree with you on that. And another thing to add is that point of interest is that Immigration New Zealand, they have their processing offices in Delhi, in Beijing, and in Manila in the Philippines. And during the lockdown that we had, which was April 1 through until June, all those offices closed down. And in fact, Delhi hasn't opened yet. And so what it's meant is that a lot of the processing of visas has gone right behind. And so there's quite a backlog. And that backlog is only going to grow again. So what we are anticipating is that when those borders open again, there's going to be a huge rush, not necessarily from people like yourselves, but from employers here in New Zealand who are so short of skills. I mean, we talk to people every day who just can't find people. They can't get stuff done. They can't build the motorways. They can't build the hospitals. So they're desperate for the skills, but they can't bring them in. So as soon as the borders open, they'll be going out there trying to find them. And then therefore, there's going to be a high volume of people all applying at the same time. So what we're saying, get ahead of the queue, beat them, because it's going to happen. So I guess, you know, as I said, we've only got 30 minutes. We don't want to take up your time. It's 8:30 in the UK. We've got the opportunity to talk to Paul later. We run these webinars on a monthly basis. We've got a Facebook page. We're very, very communicative, and you know, would love to hear from you. Naseem, do you have anything to say to wrap up before we go?
I just wanted to reiterate that whole being prepared and getting started now. So obviously part of my role and my team's role is not just working with the candidates, but with the employers. And a lot of what we see is that they want to know, when will someone arrive? Or, you know, they've come across someone, when exactly will they be able to arrive? When can we lodge? What will the processing time be? So when we've been working with a candidate or a client, we can say, oh, look, this person's, you know, 6 weeks away or 8 weeks away or whatever it might be, based on, you know, where they're at and we know their situation. Other times they'll come across and say, oh, someone was sort of sorting it out themselves and, you know, they should have been here 2 years ago and they're still not here. What's happening? And because New Zealand is so small, and because everyone knows everybody, you want to make sure that when you are applying for a job, one, you are ready and you're not flooding the market. Because having moved here from New Zealand, I can't even tell you how careful I have to be. You know, I can't even wear my pajamas to go to the supermarket because 100% I'll run into someone that I know or that knows me. So it's about being aware of the country that you're looking to come to and what's required here, and preparing accordingly so that that's not going to be, you know, there's going to be no hiccups and it's going to be as smooth as possible. And, you know, like myself, you can make New Zealand home. So I think that's the advice that I'd give. Nice.
Paul, final words, please.
Final words, real simple. Loads and loads of questions on here that I've been reading. Obviously, as you said, we can't type answers into everyone, and we don't know enough about each person on here to give the correct answer just by a quick message. If you want a 45-minute consultation with me, this isn't just a quick, hey, you know, let's have a chat. It's a full 45-minute consultation where I'll get all the information about you, get your CV, get all that stuff, work through, you know, check your eligibility, but then work through a roadmap of how to make this move by going through 4 stages. If you want all the information that's going to actually let you move forward, because you've stuck around, because you've registered, it's going to be free. We're feeling generous. It's usually about £95 or something we charge for a call like that. I'm happy to give my time up if you're serious about making the move. So the consultation is free. I'll just stick it up one more time, but we are going to email this out to everyone as well. But that's really the message. If you're serious and you want to move, do something about it.
Oh, you're still muted, Scott.
Okay, sorry about that. I was on mute. So that's a wrap. Thank you very much for joining us. There's so many people from all around the world that have joined in today. My summary is, yes, borders are closed, but New Zealand needs skilled people. We're open for business. Our economy and our future is, really exciting, and we welcome people. We're a very diverse nation, and we just hope you come on the journey, but check it all out first. So thanks very much, and have a good evening and stay safe. Bye.